Uh, Hello, everybody. I'm Elliot, and Danique's to my right, I guess. I know
Hello.
all of you, but we're part of Big Picture Learning. I'm co-founder, and Danique's a regional director, and we've been around Big Picture, started it 26 years ago. And before that, it was our partnership with Dennis Litke and myself before we became a not-for-profit. Basically, big picture schools start with the interests and choices of each and every student. We have a learning plan for every student, 2 days a week. Our students out getting access to people around their interests so they develop and use their social capital, which schools don't necessarily do. We issue diplomas around content and certifications around content, but don't do a lot of who knows you know what you know. We're a very innovative school network, probably the most innovative in the public sector. And I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about big picture. Our push is around creating more equitable environments, both in and outside of school. Very, very strong, always has been there. And to that end, the work that we're going to talk to you about today is about health disparities. We're an organization that is much more about prevention than intervention. And that's why we start with our students' interests and get them connected to adults outside in the community. That said, one of our learning goals is personal qualities. And in that learning goal fits this whole set of 6 measures, which were developed as an evidence base by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And I'll go to my screen right now and share some things with you. Hopefully I'll go to my screen. Yeah, over here, I think. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're all good.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Danique. And so to that end, we took these 6 measures of eating well, which is going to a plant-based diet, towards a plant-based diet, lowering your sugar, fat, and salt, getting enough sleep, exercise, having healthy relationships, avoiding harmful substances, and mitigating stress, which are all preventions. And if you go on the American College of Lifestyle Medicine site, which we're the only school partner that they have right now in the K-12 arena, you'll see graphics like this around chronic disease problems that impact communities of color in higher percentages than the general population. And when you look at these and you see heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, and you see that 80% of what we see as disease can be prevented by these evidence-based 6 measures, you go, what's schools doing about this stuff? We know that these measures are real. And yet, we get students up early, don't let them sleep. We give them higher stress a lot of times around testing and grading and things that we could mitigate much, much better. We don't give them time to exercise. So, and developing healthy relationships, all those pieces, we could argue and create a case that when a child walks into a school, no matter where, when they come out at the end of the day, they may be sicker than when they went in. And then we're asking for high performance on academic measures. Well, all this is connected and interrelated. And that's what we're here to talk to you about. So to that end, our students are developing a website and an app that they are going to drive the content and the information, and we're going to put it out on social media, on our website as a repository, and then develop an app where every student can self-assess and measure and select peers that they want to help them get better at those 6 measures. And so that's basically what we're doing. And we only have a little bit of time here. So I'm going to move along and pass off to Danique Dolly, who's been part of Big Picture, I'm happy to say, for 26 years. Some of that time away from us, he got his doctorate at Harvard, around the issues that we're talking about, around these health and educational disparities and inequities. And Danique is going to share a personal narrative, and then we're going to go off and talk to Condell, and hopefully Elijah, if he comes on there from one of our schools. We have 200 schools around the world, about 65 in the United States. And Condell, thank you for joining us. So Danique, take it away.
Thanks, Elliot. I'll probably be sharing the screen, so let me do
I'll
that
stop
real
my
quick.
share, Danique.
No problem. Thank you, everybody, for having us. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to talk about some health disparities in a way that actually touches me dearly, and that is around some family, if you allow me to do that. And first, I want to just go into some information that I learned from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine that relates to health disparities. And this is the first bullet. I don't think I even have to go much further with this. Historically, I don't like the word minorities, but people of color, those communities, people of color have consistently been disproportionately affected by health disparities. I'm gonna just stop there, all right? Because if you even look up right now when you're bored and you look up high blood pressure, you look at a risk factor. If you're Black, you're a risk factor. And something's wrong with that. So I wanted to look deeper into it. And I know in the corners you see DeGrasse Tyson, that's the science of it. And then you see good old, our good brother at the bottom, John Lewis, and that's the social action part. And that's why I'm trying to combine. People, when we talked about COVID and those who get it, it's like, who's at high risk for COVID, right? And it's usually like, this is a pandemic. It relates to certain things. Well, what I think about is, what are the epidemics that have contributed since around the 1600s that relate to this? Heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, high blood pressure. And one of them I want to get into is stroke and how that relates to dementia and so forth, so on and so forth. This right here is just a quick, you want to glance over it. It just straight up says there are health inequities and when it comes to people of color, related to housing, related to how we're living, related to how we're surviving, the access to grocery stores, which is pretty much food apartheid. All these things are contributing, even how you get to the doctor. You know, my mom lives in Colombia and I have to make sure she gets to the doctor because she can't get there on her own. So all these things contribute to it. And we're going to look at it on a deeper level. On Sunday was the 4th anniversary of the passing of my father. And right, this picture is a picture of my father. My father's name is Jeffrey Sylvester Dolly. He was a good man who just tried to make sure his 2 sons went to college. He grew up in East Harlem. He was attacked, assaulted by police before. He was beat up by gangs of different races before. And all he wanted to do was make sure his sons did the best they could. He used to eat eggs every morning and he did smoke cigarettes. And that's where I want to go, because in the neighborhood, he smoked the cigarettes. But this is what we found. This is also a piece of my dad. And I want to show this because he was also an artist. He was a human being who was an artist and worked in the post office to make money for his sons. But this was around our neighborhood. And I'm going to stop right here because if you go from the Bronx to East Harlem or to Harlem to the Bronx, you will see this sign on the Willis Avenue Bridge in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s. It said, I love New York. And then it turned into I love Newport, Newport cigarettes. And it said, alive with pleasure. Well, my dad died because of cigarettes. My dad died because of the fact that the cigarettes contributed to high cholesterol, which contributed to his first stroke, which contributed to many strokes, which contributed to him getting it's dementia. And dementia was watching them die another slow death. So I almost watched my dad pass twice. But I want to show this because this is what's allowed in our neighborhoods, in these Harlem and in the Bronx, where poor people live, where Black people live, where Latinx people live. This is what we had. And then it's like, so why do they smoke? It's legal. We didn't know how bad it was. My dad didn't smoke anything else. He thought it was okay. And I'm saying that to say, these are the hidden inequities, and this is how it looks. All right. And then when people don't know how they're hurting themselves, it gets worse. I could have talked about my mom related to how her eating of sweets in the neighborhood, because a lot of the bodegas and stores had sweets and she thought she was doing nothing wrong there. I could have talked about my aunt who died from lung cancer also, and she thought she was wasn't doing much harm because she's like, oh, I'm not smoking weed. I'm not doing drugs. This is sold over the counter. So this is right in our face. And these, I mean, it comes from the food and things that are sold right before us. So I'm gonna just stop right there. And I wanna just say that in thinking about these disparities and thinking about how beneath the surface it is why I thought about, well, I'm working with Elliot and we're working with schools on it so they can be aware, so they can look at things and see like what's really going on with advertising or what's really going on with healthy eating instead of just going along with it. And lastly, I would say myself as a principal, I didn't even do the right thing when it came to how to make sure my students were working on those 6 measures down to, I used to have PSET for lunch sometimes, or thinking about, well, it's at least better than the school lunch, but I couldn't win a fight over the school lunch. So, and that's just food. That's not time I started school or what I did in health class and so on and so forth. So all this to say is the inequities are everywhere. It's really how do we flip it on its head and be just as strong with equity or with pushing what we believe. So thank you. Elbow, where are we going from here?
We're going to turn it over to the panelists, but I was wondering. Elliot,
No, we're going to turn it over to Condell for a second, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Elijah, I don't think made it, but Condell is an advisor at one of our schools, Innovations in Reno, Nevada, and that's the school that's starting this up. And Condell, you got a few words for us?
Sure. Thanks for thanks for having me. I know that Elijah would have liked to have been here to sort of talk about some of the things that he's tried to accomplish over the course of his time away. Our school shut down, like many other schools shut down back in March due to the pandemic. And he has chosen to engage in distance learning in this new school year. But the pandemic obviously was very difficult for a lot of us to come to grips with, right? To sort of manage how we go about our daily lives at that point. And the great thing about Elijah, who's a junior here at Innovations, he really took that time as an opportunity to better himself and to better his health and fitness. He's done a lot of work over the last 6 months related to how to eat better. And not only how to eat better, but the science behind eating better as it relates to his fitness goals, right? And so he's always been an athlete, but he hasn't ever really looked deeply into how food relates to activity. And so that's what he attempted to do over the course of his break on his own. And I've been into health and fitness for a while, but he didn't even take any direction from me. You talk about scholarly driven. It was totally scholarly driven. So he's looked at natural foods and how they can generate these micronutrients that can help him generate energy, that can help him to be better at fitness. He has refashioned his workouts so that he can accomplish different goals rather than just getting bigger. He's trying to get stronger. He's trying to get quicker. He's trying to get more mobile. And as it sort of relates to what Danique talked about, how there's so little knowledge in some of our communities as it relates to these kinds of opportunities. Elijah's put a lot of that stuff on YouTube channels. He's tried to get a lot of his scholars, his peers, onto his channel so they could see what types of things that he's doing. He's created projects that he's presented in advisory to sort of give us all an idea of some of the things that he's been doing. It's been pretty amazing to watch him every single week come up with something new as it relates to his health and his fitness. And so I know he would have been pretty excited to share that with you himself. But he's really done a lot of great work in those areas that we are trying to develop with the app and things.
Right.
Thank
You for that. I wish he was here as well. For the speakers, is it okay to, are you ready for us to open it up to the panel? Okay, great. And just a quick note. First of all, thanks for the courage to bring this this critical topic to schools. I think we forget sometimes that is a central engine of our democracy, and to bring it to schools and ask schools to respond in a responsible way, I think is really, really important. Just a quick note, I read a report from the CDC about 3 weeks ago that said that 94%, that was again 3 weeks ago, 94% of the COVID deaths all had an attached comorbidity. And those comorbidity factors were inextricable from race, ethnicity, socioeconomic levels, and so on. And I just want to thank you and congratulate you again for bringing this to the fore, and to get students involved, to get their voices involved with other students, I think is critical, is central to the purpose of education. And I will leave that comment and to the panel, invite panel to come in and comment or ask questions.
Bring them on.
Hi, Elliot and Danique. How are you?
Great.
Good.
Question, as I mentioned, I'm with a small nonprofit in Bocas del Toro, Panama, working specifically with indigenous communities, and just wondering from your experience with schools in other countries and regions of the world, what differences and disparities and what your differences in approaches.
Right. Well, that's a very long, that's a good question, and it deserves a very, very long answer. We do have schools all over the world. We have schools in Australia, New Zealand mostly Maori students, and these issues, as Bob and Danique pointed out, are just blown way out of proportion to the norm, which is terrible to begin with in indigenous communities. We do a lot of work in Australia, New Zealand. We have a school in Kenya also that's involved, and they're all involved and starting to get involved in the development of these 6 measures. And like I said earlier, schools pay attention to academics, but these influence performance no matter what you do, as Condell referenced. So I can have a long offline talk with you about that and introduce you to the people who are doing that work also in Winnipeg, Canada. They're First People, and we have a school up in upstate New York, which is mostly Onondaga. They're all involved in the work that we're doing around these measures, and there's non-prescriptive ways of doing this. We're not looking for any kind of prescription. We're looking for your way, personally, that matches up culturally and with your community about how you work on these for the rest of your life. Because if you don't have your health, doesn't matter how many degrees you have. I'll say that. Danique, comment?
I think it's culture. That's cultural to me. And I think I'll just start with even in the Black community, right? There are some things you have to figure out how to do it. It's about also how you do it. Like there's some people in the Black community who still probably eat things that probably shouldn't be. Like I'll put my own family out there, chitlins, right? But which is, if you don't know what that is, you probably should look that up. But not healthy, but it's been passed down for years. It's cultural at this point. It's survival food. That's all they gave us when we were enslaved, and we turned it into something good. But it's still not really good for us. And so maybe going into the history of some of why or what we have or what each culture might have like that, as to, hey, it was something put upon us. So whatever is put upon the people, and just making them aware that, hey, this isn't good for you because of this. I think that's as well as I can give you, not knowing the deeper context of that area.
Thank you.
I have a question, if we're finished with that one. I'm curious of how you guys approach the school lunch system and the education around what you believe is truly healthy foods versus, what's often advertised to students.
I'll start, and then I could let Elliot take, or anyone take it. That's a battle. It's a hard battle. Even when they say they're going to give you a salad bar, it's not the best quality food. It's you got to fight for it. I fought for little salad bars and things like that, and making the kids aware and getting the kids on our team. We worked with a school in New Orleans, tried to do that. Worked with a school in Baltimore, similar thing. It's a deeper battle. I hope we can make it a larger fight. But right now, they're giving scraps, and it is not a priority.
Can I ask, what is the battle? I mean, this seems like such a clear moral, what should be an edict, and yet
we live in capitalistic America, where you have food programs have a budget, and they have, and then some food programs have almost like a monopoly also. If you look down in New Orleans, where everything is a charter, it's like, all right, who do I know who can give me the cheapest? And it's a hustle, and it's not a priority a lot of times. And when it is, it's usually like, we'll give you a salad, something like a salad bar, which is just so basic.
Right.
And it's not the best. I don't know what will change the quality of food in public schools.
But there is an economic driver here.
It's a political economic driver. It's the dairy industry, the meat industry, the poultry industry, the egg industry, the pig industry, the salt, sugar, and fat, and the surplus that we have, and subsidies that we have that create the conditions that we're in. Doesn't matter if you're eating a cow, a pig, or a chicken, you're eating corn. Corn is subsidized, and it's sugar. It's corn sugar, and it's corn syrup. So these pieces go back way deep in our political system, about who gets the subsidies and why. And the schools end up getting the subsidies, and lunches are subsidized. And people have not come around to lowering their sugar, fat, and salt, going to a plant-based diet. And that is a tremendous battle for students when they demand and ask for different and better foods, and some do and more are, as well as staff, because we're getting people sick. Now, is there movement around that? I'm involved in certain states where they don't want to take federal dollars. They feel that they can do this themselves and better, and provide better meals that are less sugar, less fat, less salt, and more plant-based. California is one such place where that is a possibility. And if California does it, other states may do it as well. These are gigantic, gigantic issues. And that if you remember, and you may not, Oprah Winfrey brought this to the attention of the American public with a guy who was the mad cow cattleman who became a plant-based fella.
Yeah.
And they tried to take her off the air. It's that simple. This is very, very powerful workings of our political system and our economic system at stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could.
Okay.
Sorry. I just wanted to relate an experience that I had that sort of presents some of the challenges that school districts face. I wrote a grant about 6 years ago, and I was able to get enough money to start our weight program. And along with that, I had the idea to provide a training table as well with some of those foods provided after workouts. Some of the healthy foods that we certainly want kids to be able to have. But some of the hoops that the district forced us to jump through, from things like who comes in to prepare the food to you have to buy from this specific place that we deal with services, made it impossible to actually create that training table. So there are certainly challenges related to school districts that make it difficult to provide those kinds of foods.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to ask Peter to jump in here. Peter and I have a long history together, and he has his professional life has been dedicated to schools at all levels, from governance to the classroom to various levels of leadership and so on. And Peter, there's a sticking point here, and then I'm wondering what's coming to mind for you and what you're thinking about.
Well, let me go back to the app. This app idea is wonderful. It sounds, Elliot and Danique, it sounds like it's a very personal journey for kids, right? They do that personally. But I'm also interested in how you turn kids into activists, such as what happened with the gun lobby and kids several years ago, which you don't hear about so much at the moment, but it is continuing. In other words, the fast food industry, which really does, targets poor people and communities of color, when I think of McDonald's and places like that. What are the possibilities? What does Big Picture do, and what should other schools do to make students activists about how their schools are treating them vis-a-vis food, and what they see in their own communities? Because there are some powerful voices to harness there, but that doesn't seem to be as high up on the agenda as, say, student activism around guns, or student activism around climate change, let's say, which of course is connected.
I think we should be doing student activism, period. And activism to me, is agitation of any system. That's my definition of activism, in the good old King sense of agitation. I think it's about, I worked with a school that was about sustainability, and we tried to just make them aware. It starts with a lot of awareness. It starts with a lot of we used to use the term deeper learning, like diving deeply into the topic to have them understand, like, hey, where is your food coming from? Why do you have so many certain stores in your neighborhood, or understanding even your neighborhood, which is actually one of the measures listed. And I think that's a part of it. And then also letting them choose their battles. I think it's, some is going to be food, some might be gun laws, some might be climate change. All of it is somewhat relevant, but these things are not going to go away in our world. And I think so we have to keep our eye on it and continue to work it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up like that. The whole point of the website, and we use the term student driven. We're with students because they want to do. With and want are big words for us. And so the whole idea was In ad campaigns, well, who stopped people from smoking? It was children and their families. Who made people wear seatbelts? It was children and their families. Who opened up the gates to Little Rock Central High School? It was children, and they were all with adults, but their children led the march.
Yeah, Ruby Bridges and the rest.
And so as we're going through this, I'm sorry that Elijah's not here because he was on Danique's Puzzle Pieces podcast with Condell. He didn't just exercise and bring exercise and do it himself. He brought it to his family. He's bringing it to his school as an example. And I just finished teaching a course at College Unbound, which is our college, to 8 women. And the course I learned a lot. One of the things I learned was, although you're dealing with your own personal story and history, the biggest factor, or among the biggest factors, was helping somebody else get better around those 6 measures. Mm-hmm. So they were helping their families get better. They were helping their friends get better. They were helping people at work get better. They were changing their jobs. And I'm just going to keep reminding us that there are 6 measures there, not just one, around the healthy eating, which is very, very important. Don't get me wrong. But all 6 are places where schools fall very, very short. And they're all, as one student in the college class reminded me, these are all connected. You can't do one without the other.
Right.
So they are dependent, and I hope you're right and we're right about that app, because we're given so much freedom to how you do it, that it could impact, as Danique said, and I think it was Emily who asked the question, any culture. How you enter into this is your choice, and that's real important. And who you share information with and have a coach with and a peer coach with is your choice. So that's what we're aiming for.
Actually, real quick, I'll just say, in one of the schools, we were trying to do like a study of sugar. So it's even a study of sugar in America compared to other countries, or a study of salt, like in sodium. Like, even if you start there, because you'll see sugar sales. I mean, Florida, and there's like a lockdown, a monopoly on sugar. It's sold at a cheaper price here on purpose. Like, it's so wild. And if they get to understand that, then when they go to stores and they get to drink their brisk, they're like, oh yeah, they know how to look, read it. But anyway.
No, I can flash show you a map of obesity in the United States over the last 30 years, and you would be completely shocked.
So,
and see how high the percentages have grown and where, to Danique's point, down south.
Anita, jump in.
So my background's public health, and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking that you guys are doing amazing work, and it just gets me so excited to hear you talking. And then I think this is talking so much about the individual, and as a public health professional, I think I worry about the pressure that's on the individual to change their behavior, because really what's happened is the system has failed all of us.
That's right.
And that, Danique, you led off with these great slides about the data of how health disparities around cancer and heart disease and stroke have decimated the Black community. And that's because the systems have failed the individuals. Right. And yes, we all as individuals have a responsibility for our health, but to singularly ask each of us to bear the weight of that is really the wrong conversation. And so I think about making sure that we're holding ourselves accountable for our own behaviors, but making sure we're holding the systems that got us in this hole accountable for that, including our governments at the city, the local, the state, and the federal levels. And thinking about Peter, your question or your statement about youth activists, I was thinking, it made me think about here in Maine, when the tobacco settlement dollars were distributed. In Maine, one of the ways it was distributed was that youth advocacy was specifically funded. Because while it's great, yes, I love grassroots advocacy among youth, but sometimes you need to dedicate money to make sure that there's a nudge, to make sure that that happens. And so some of what you're talking about isn't happening because there's not resources dedicated to it as well. And so it's not either or, but it's both.
It's both. And but how do you,
that's just my opinion.
no, I think it's great opinion. I think, but the question is, how do you get people to let go of the stereotype, let go of certain things? For example, when crack hit my neighborhood, they sure to put people in prison. They didn't say, oh, this is a crisis, then we need to help the people. But I sure heard that about New Hampshire, you know, and it's like, oh, there's an opioid crisis. We need to help the people. They didn't say that about people in Harlem. And that's public health right there. Like that's a group of, that's systemic. You know? So that's a problem. I
agree 100% that there is, I would hold my own profession accountable for some of the harm that has happened, for sure. I would not hold all of us accountable. There are lots of there's some good ones in there too, but I would say that it is not across the board. But, you know, I think we all have to hold ourselves accountable for that. And, but I want to make sure that
there's no point to worry there. It was never our intention that individuals alone were part of this. And I thought I stated that at the beginning, that it is to change both individual behavior and the behavior of the system, which not just the health system, but the education system has failed and continues to fail people. Not only that, they don't even have the right information. Most doctors don't have this information. Most doctors would argue with it. Most health officials would argue with it. So that's why ACLM is so important as a partner. They're about intervention, vaccines, treatments, and pharma, which is the other part of the food industry, in the health industry. Well, what makes money? Selling pills, vaccines. What doesn't make money is taking it upon yourself to change how you behave, you know, and take control over your health and create better health systems that are about prevention, not just interventions. Of course, we need interventions. I'm not saying we don't, but we have developed both systems, education and health, that are interventionist systems. They don't do much around prevention. You got to wait till something big happens for the education system to respond individually or collectively to an issue. And the same thing is true of health. You don't go to the doctor until you're sick. You don't go when you're healthy. That's not what people do. They kind of stay away. So we got a lot in front of us. And I would agree with you completely, Anita.
Molly, you're seeing the final manifestation of the breakdown of all of this right there in the ICU. Anything coming to mind?
Yeah, well, I actually was reminded of my public health class at Georgetown. We had this one lecture that talked about how zip code was a bigger health indicator than genetic code was. And I think we are seeing that definitely in the ICU. Kind of when people come to the point where they are sick enough with COVID that they need to come to us, they often, I would say every single time, have a long, long list of comorbidities. And most of those, you know, you start out your nursing report with past medical history of hypertension, hyperlipidemia, you know, smoking history. So I was kind of thinking about how you get students involved. I'm a recent graduate, so thinking about my time in school and how I got involved in different organizations and kind of pursued my passions, and how do we get students involved early and often with these topics. And I really did like how you're engaging them in social media and starting an app. And I was kind of wondering what other ways can we get young kids involved in this?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're so, oh God, we're beyond time actually, but Katie Jane.
Can I just say one thing about that? So ACLM is an avenue for us, a launch pad into that world that is doing the work around medical colleges, health systems, to your point, Anita, and to Molly's point. So they are where we are sending our students. They are doing that work in the healthcare system.
And Katie Jane, as a high school student, what are your thoughts?
I'm curious, specifically on like the stress and healthy relationships in school, how your guys' network limits that through the systematic competition that is like instilled in students to be better than each other, to, I don't know, succeed and end up, everybody just cares about like the end result, like where are you going to go to college or what's your grades. And I guess, how does your network deal with that and lead to like decreasing the stressful lives that continue with us throughout like work competition and just life?
I think I'm a
Can we do a 1-minute response to that? Because I'm sorry, we're running out of time. Yeah.
All right, Cordell, anything you want to add? Because I think it's about, we don't speak like that at big picture schools normally. We talk about being a part, like your interest, being a part of an advisory, and an advisory is a larger group, which is almost an extended family. But Cordell, you take it. I mean, Condell, sorry.
And I think that that's important. But we understand that those stressors are sort of external. They come with kids. So one of the things that we've tried to do is create an environment of mindfulness in our schools, so that kids, when they are feeling those stressors, right, have an opportunity to go to a place that we have dedicated for things like meditation, yoga, and those sorts of things. And we try to just instruct kids on how to generate tools that will allow them to help with those stressors. The stressors are just going to be there, but how do you respond to those stressors is sort of where we have thrived so far.
Okay. So unfortunately, we're out of time. And I want to close, first of all, with a thank you to our speakers and to the panelists, and a thought. The thought being that this conversation today can really be an inspiration for more and more of these conversations that we hope in under the umbrella of ethics will lead to action. And in support of that, this session is being recorded. I think it's going to take a few days, I guess, to be produced. But for all of you, perhaps you can take this session in its entirety, or maybe just the introduction, the first 15 minutes by our speakers. You can take it to your classrooms. You can take it maybe to your institutions and so on, to use it as a prompt to continue this critically important conversation. Thanks to our speakers. Bill, we have a lot of information in the chat box right now that people can perhaps reference.
Yeah, so I tried to put some of the things, Elliot, Danique, thank you so much, that you mentioned on that resources sheet. Please feel free, it's a Google Doc. I'll make sure I'll give you access if you want to add any other links. As you were talking, I was trying to add the links to the podcast. You mentioned Elliot, where you had Elijah on, Danique, and all of that. So feel free to add to that. Lots of great resources there. And then my only question was, I know it's still in development, but do you have a graphic of those 6 measures, or is the website
Yeah.
up yet for people
Oh,
to
yeah,
learn a little
yeah.
bit more about?
Yeah, and you can find them on ACLM, and we have our own graphics. Yeah, we're in partnership with them. So yes, I'll send that to you.
Okay, excellent. I'll add those to the resources. Thank you both so much.
Thank
As
you.
Bob said, this is a really
Thank you.
important conversation, and I hope that this is the launching point for continued conversations around this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Too.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all.